Greetings everyone, I'm Kevin and let's play an original bookish game, which is Would You Rather. So the way that this is going to work is that I will do a random number generator from number 1 to number 151, because on this shelf behind me I have 151 books read. And then on my bottom shelf, I still have like Shakespeare and mythology and stuff like that. So I'm not counting that shelf. So the fiction books that I have behind me, and like non-fiction books as well, but like books that aren't part of a collection, let's say that, are behind me, and they are 151 in total. And I will do a random number generator twice, so I will get one book and another book. So we have book 1 and book 2, and I will have a question. Would you rather eat sushi with the character in book 1, the protagonist in book 1, or the protagonist in book 2? Like things like that, but not, you know, eating sushi with, which some of these I would love to, some of these I would not love to. And that's kind of like the interesting thing. So without further ado, let's do the first number. Between 1 and 151. Almost 150, which I think is fun. So the first book is number 86. The first book is Spencer Cohen series book 1. It's such a weird name for a series, but the third Spencer Cohen book. This is book 1, and book 2 is number 41. And it's this one. So we have book 1 and book 2. And the first question is, would you rather live in book 1's opening setting or book 2's opening setting? So both of these are set on Earth. The difference is that this starts off in the US, in LA. I had to like think, because this is the third book. It begins in LA and then he goes to Australia, but it begins in LA. So the opening setting of this is LA, and this starts off with our main character being abducted by aliens. So I kind of find it really funny that we have like 2 books set on Earth, and then we have this very twisted one that was opened in like spaceship. So I'm gonna have to take this one. So We Are the Ants wins the first. I would much rather be teleported right now to spaceship than to LA. I don't have anything against LA, but like imagine being in a spaceship and seeing the stars outside and like the planets and the infinite black, and you know that. So I'm gonna go with We Are the Ants. And then we're doing the second Would You Rather question, which is book 3 and book 4. So the first book on this round is 127. So I'm gonna go from the bottom because it's closest. So the first book is We Just Clicked, and the second book is number 41. Haven't we already had number 41? That was We Are the Ants, right? That was We Are the Ants. So I'm gonna do one more. 66. And book number 2 is Give Me a Wicked Fox. And the second question is, would you rather live in the closing setting of We Just Clicked or Give Me a Wicked Fox? The difference here is that the end setting of Give Me a Wicked Fox is in South Korea, in Seoul, and yeah, and in We Just Clicked, it's kind of like a remote village in the UK. And here the thing is, I live in northern Sweden. I could never survive in a city with as many people as all of Sweden. Like, if you want some perspective, 90% of Swedes live in the southern half. I live in the northern half with 10% of 10 million. So like 1 million in all of us. So would I survive in a city with 10 million people when I live in a country that has that many people? I would not, and I would never personally choose to go through that. And so I'm gonna go with we just clicked. As I said with the other one, I would much rather be teleported into a remote village in Great Britain than be teleported to a city with as much people as my country. Yeah. And then we're doing round 3, and the first book is number 62. Have we had number 62? We haven't had number 62. It's The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren, one of my favorite out of romances, and it's my favorite color. I think this cover is gorgeous, so we can just take a minute to appreciate this beauty. And the second book is number 14. I love that for me. And it's The Last Story of Minelli. So far, we've basically only gotten books set on Earth. We have one paranormal, which was Give Me a Wicked Fox, and we've had one sci-fi, which is We Are the Ants. But other than that, it's all contemporary. And the third question is, would you rather be best friends with the protagonist in this one, which is Olive, or the protagonist in this one, and it has 2 protagonists, so I can either choose between a teenager, a new adult, or a woman who is dead. I'm gonna go with Margot, which is the daughter of the woman who's dead. And for this, it's Olive, as I said. So would I rather be best friend with Olive or Margot? This, like, there are multiple things that go into play here. The one that matters kind of like the most to me is the fact that I am a lot closer in age to Olive. I am 10 years older than Margot, and I feel like that would be weird. I feel like that would be very weird. Also, like, me and her, I don't think that we would really get along. But Olive, I feel like we could be friends. I don't know about best friends, but I think we could have fun together. And so for the 4th round, we go with number 62. And that was The Unhoneymooners. So I'm gonna just randomize again, and we have 126. And we've already had 126 as well, so 130. And number 130 is the Ember. It's Ember and the Ice Dragons. Ember is her name. And this is a middle grade, which is kind of like a polar fantasy. I read it for Polar Fawn. It was a fun read, it was a fun middle grade. And the second book is number 39. It's Autobiography by Christina Lauren. The question here is, who would you rather bed and who would you rather behead? And I'm gonna have to say I would much rather, like, when it says bed, it doesn't have to be sex. It can be like cuddling, anything like that, whatever you're comfortable with. So like, who would you rather share a bed with and who would you rather kill is basically the thing. And this is a minor. And she's an ice dragon. So, but I'm gonna have to go with Tanner in this one. He is in college. Like, this is new adult. So he is closer to my age. Like, he is at least of age, which she isn't. So I'm gonna have to choose that I would bed Tanner and I would behead Ember. I'm so sorry, Ember. Moving on to question 5. Let's see what the first book is. Number 118. And the first book is The Iliad by Homer. My tabbed and a little beaten up edition of The Iliad. So this is going to be very interesting. And the second book is number 82. And the second book is The Gods of Tango by Carolina de Robertis. So we now have two historicals, so that's interesting. And the question is, would you rather be arch enemies, arch nemesis with the protagonist in the Iliad, Achilles, or arch nemesis with Dante in The Gods of Tango? The thing is, Achilles is an icon. He is an icon. He's a queer icon, and it would be fairly easy to kill him since his weakness is his heel. So like, but I don't want to put Patroclus through that. I wouldn't want that. Like, I don't want to be Hector. Do you know what happens to Hector, who is Achilles' actual arch nemesis? Do you know what happens to him? It's not good. It's not good. And I don't want that fate. I don't want that fate to myself, so I'm gonna be Dante's arch nemesis. In the beginning of this book, Dante is called Letta, and they're born and raised in Italy, and they're set off to marry a guy called Dante and move to Argentina, and Letta finds out they're trans and lives their life as Dante in Argentina. So he only wears masculine clothes, short hair, and everyone knows him as Dante. So he kind of found out that he was trans by his husband dying, which I thought was kind of interesting. But I'm so sorry, Dante. It's always a tragedy when a trans person kills a trans person, but I don't have to kill them. I just have to be arch nemesis. I'm gonna be an arch nemesis with Dante in the 1920s Argentina. Okay. Moving on to question 6. The first book is 52. The book on number 52 is By the Fire, which is a collection of Sami fairy tales. So I'm gonna take the book after this one. And it's One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. So this is book 1, and book 2 is number 73. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. So, okay. This is getting like a lot more interesting and weird than I expected. And question number 6 is, would you rather be the protagonist in One Last Stop, which is August, or Alice, the protagonist in Alice's Adventures in Wonderland? Would I rather be a 20-something girl living in New York City with a love interest who is stuck in time from the 1970s? Would I prefer falling down a rabbit hole and gone into this world? Hell yes, I'm gonna pick Alice. I would much rather be Alice 9 out of 7 days a week. What? But like, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, this book means a lot to me. This story means a lot to me. The movie means a lot to me, especially the Tim Burton movie means a lot to me. So in what universe would I choose living in New York City over going to Wonderland and meeting the Hatter, having a tea party with talking hares who is always running out of time? I would love that. So I'm gonna say that I would rather be Alice. And for question number 7, the first book is number 54. And the first book is The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R. Tolkien. This is the Swedish edition. That's why it looks like this. So this is the first book. Oh my god. And the second book is number 42. I feel like we've had this number. Haven't we had this number? Yeah, we just had this number. It's By the Fire Won't Let Stop. So I'm gonna do one more. And we have number 21. And the second book is Aurora Burning by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff, meaning that book one, we have a fantasy, a high fantasy, kind of like a classic high fantasy by this point, and a contemporary high sci-fi, hardcore sci-fi, space sci-fi adventure. And this one is very more like, it's difficult. Like this one is difficult because it's, would you rather be the villain in book one or book two? And there is no clear villain, like not one person. It's more like an organization that is a villain in this one, whereas in this one there is a clear villain. And it doesn't really matter what, if there was a specific villain in this one, I would choose to be Sauron because the aesthetics. I would prefer that. Like if I'm gonna be a villain, let's be the most iconic villain of all time. And like I wouldn't mind being Saruman either. I'm just gonna say that. And we're moving on to question 8. And the first book is number 71. Have we had number 71? I don't remember. The first book I haven't had before, and it's the Bromance Book Club by Lyssa Kay Adams. So we get an adult romance back here again. And the second book is number 40. Why don't I remember the one that got number 41? That would be so helpful. And it's Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. This question got a little bit complicated because it's, you are in a love triangle between the protagonist in this book and the protagonist in this book, and who would you choose? So we're having a love triangle moment. The thing is, there are 2 characters in this one, 2 POVs, and there are 2 POVs in this one. So I'm gonna go with my favorite of both, of like either one. So I'm going with Camino in this one and Gavin in this one. Even if we would age up Camino 10 years, so she would be somewhat closer in age to me, I would still choose Gavin. He's like 15 years older than me. I would choose him. I don't care. I don't care. I have never watched baseball in my entire life. It's not a popular thing in Sweden, but he plays baseball and I would watch. And I hate Fia. Like the reason I gave this book 3 stars instead of like a higher rating is because of Fia. I hated her. She was the worst love interest or, you know, protagonist in a romance that I've ever read. I despised her. And I felt like I read this and I was like, Gavin deserves better. So I'm gonna, in this love triangle, I'm gonna choose Gavin. And then we're on to question 9, and the first book is number 70. I'm starting to get suspicious that we have had, that most of these books are kind of recycling. Like the numbers are recycling by this point. That should have been a lot easier if I remembered that the Bromance Book Club was number 71. Which meant that I would just have to take the book next to it. And the book that was next to it was Slow River by Nicola Griffith. I read this 5 years ago. 6 years ago. No, actually 6 years ago. I don't remember this that much. So this is going to be a difficult question because of that. And the second book for this question is number 76. That I like. And is Dating Makes Perfect by Pintip Dunn. The absolute best YA romance I have ever read. Yes, I said that. This was beautiful, this was gorgeous. I want to read more from this author. I just really love this story so much. I adore this. So we have a book that I don't remember that much about, and a book that I absolutely loved. How are we gonna do this? The question is, would you rather be the sidekick to the protagonist of book 1 or the protagonist of book 2? I'm gonna pick book 2. I'm gonna be Winnie's sidekick. You know, I'm gonna be that involved adult who gives her coffee and says, tell me about this boy, or whatever. I'm gonna be the sidekick in that way. Like, I'm gonna be a supportive adult figure in her life and give advice and listen to her complain and be like a cheerleader to her, that kind of side. So I'm gonna go with Winnie because she's absolutely fantastic. I really love her as a character and I would love to be her sidekick. Then we're moving on to question 10, and I hope that we get to numbers that are relatively close, like 52 and 53. And the first book is 50. Wow. And the first book is Pax Nidstången by Åsa Larsson, Ingela Korsell, and Henrik Jonsson. This is a Swedish middle grade book that is kind of like a supernatural, paranormal, kind of shadow hunters, but the Asa faith, Nordic folklore and stuff like that. And we have these two brothers who are fighting these evil spirits that aren't, you know, evil spirits in that way, but more, you know, creatures from our folklore and the old religion, and they have to defeat those beasts. That's this. And the second book is number 27. And we have Turtle Under Ice by Julia del Rosario. So this one is a YA novel in verse that is kind of sad, and it's set during a snowstorm. This question is another one of those that I expected to go a lot more different than it did. And it's, would you rather have the abilities of the protagonist in book 1 or the protagonist in book 2? This book has two protagonists, and this book has also multiple POVs. We don't only get the brothers, we also get like people around them. But this one we follow two sisters, and one of them has a talent for painting and the other one has a talent for playing soccer. So I choose between having the ability to paint or play soccer, or, you know, see mythological creatures from folklore and the like old religion, the Asa faith, and stuff like that. Like, this would be so cool. Like, to be able to see the magical things and the mythical things that we hear as legends and fairy tales, and to see those things around you, that would be really cool. So I'm gonna go with the ability to see Nordic folklore creatures and beings and items and magic. And now we're moving on to question 11, which is not as character specific. The first book is number 25. I don't know if you've had that one. The first book is How to Stop Time by Matt Haig. This is hilarious, and you're gonna understand why in a second. The second book is, this would be really funny if it's that book that I'm thinking about, number 37. This is the weirdest thing that has ever happened to me. I got they both die at the end. This is my own little touch on this. I painted the edges and stuff, but they both die at the end. So the question is, would you rather frame the cover of How to Stop Time or They Both Die at the End? And this is hilarious because I already have. The reason that they are naked hardcovers is because I have literally framed both covers. So we have How to Stop Time and They Both Die at the End. So would I rather frame the cover of How to Stop Time or They Both Die at the End? I did both. Both, I guess. I have. Like, what am I supposed to say? I did. It's in the same frame. The funny thing is that these aren't the only covers that I have framed in my apartment. I have a few more. Like, this one is another one that I love, Dear Evan Hansen. I have this, as you can see, framed as well. But the fact that the random number generator picked the two books that are literally in the same goddamn frame. Like, Are you like so we're gonna move on from this and move on to the 12th question, and the first book is number 68. And the first book is The X-Talk by Rachel Lynn Solomon, and the second book is number 83. And this time we have We Are Okay by Nina LaCour. Now we get one that is also kind of easy, and it is, would you rather go to a deserted island with the X-Talk or We Are the Ants? We Are Okay. I am not okay, clearly. I would choose the X-Talk because I gave this 5 stars. It was beautiful. Like, I loved everything about this. I don't know if I gave it 5 stars or 4 stars, but I gave it a high rating. I really loved this as a romance, as an adult romance. The whole radio station thing, I really enjoyed. It was a very like feel-good book. So I feel like I would much rather sit on a deserted island and read a romance. We Are Okay is kind of sad. It's really sad. I don't want those vibes on a deserted island. I would much rather read a romance with a happy ending. And then we're on to the last round, and the first book of the last round is number 149. And the first book of the last round is Star Trek The Motion Picture, the book. I love Star Trek. If you're new to this channel, you may not know that, but I adore Star Trek, especially the original series. I don't really care that much for the remakes, but the original series has a special place in my heart. And the absolute last book of this is number 35. And the last book is The Crier's War by Nina Varela. So the question is, would you rather name your child after the protagonist in the motion picture or Crier's War? The protagonists in this one, Isla and Crier. I would not name a child Crier because they're gonna be criers anyway. And this one, James Tiberius Kirk, Mr. Spock, or Leonard McCoy. I'm gonna go with this one actually because I would much rather have a child called Ayla. I feel like that would be a lot easier to have when the main language is Swedish. Like Ayla is a lot easier to say than James. And also I wouldn't name a child Spock, and I would not name a child Leonard. So I'm gonna go with Ayla. And so that was it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this little would you rather bookish thing, and feel free to do this challenge or game if you want to, and please tag me if you decide to do it. And until next time, good reading. Bye.